The conversation here today is going to start with Mohanjit Jolly of Iron Pillar Fund. I have talked to Mohanjit on this forum before, and so welcome back, Mohanjit. Great to have you back here.
Good to be back with you.
And I'm looking forward to hearing more about what have been happening in Iron Pillar. I know you guys have come a long way and you've developed some very, very interesting companies. So why don't we start there? If you would actually just quickly summarize your investment thesis for people who have not met you before, I know, but so that, we can anchor it in that. But then let's just start with case studies of what you've been building.
Absolutely. So thank you again for having me again on this podcast. Yeah. So Iron Pillar, we are a growth tech investor. So we invest in growth stage companies, and I'll describe what that actually means. That are building from India, not just for India but for the world. So that's the underlying thesis. So growth stage tech, building from India, not just for India and the region, but really for the world. And the name Iron Pillar, by the way, was coined by my co-founder Anand, and it's based on the monument that stands next to Qutub Minar in Delhi, and it has withstood the test of time untarnished for 1600 years. I'm not saying that Iron Pillar will be around for 1600 years, but the reason for naming the firm Iron Pillar is so that the firm withstands the test of time untarnished, to keep that reputational index, among the highest, not just in India, but globally. We're a team of about 25 folks. I am the only one in the US. About a third of the team is in Dubai, and the remaining, 60% plus is split between Bangalore and Mumbai, primarily in Bangalore. So Bangalore, I would say, is our India hub. And then a third of the folks, including 3 partners in Dubai, and I'm holding the fort here in India.
And when you say growth stage,
yes,
what is your definition of growth stage?
Yeah, so when we first started, so it's definitely post product market fit. When we first started, our thesis was, let's look at companies that are perhaps in sort of 5 to 10 million in annual revenue or ARR. Now we've moved a little bit further downstream, so it's somewhere in the range of, call it 10 million on the low end to 20 million. So we're truly sort of evolving. And the reason we did that is we realized that even when we were investing in companies, let's say in the 5 to 10 million bucket, our value addition was really happening primarily once they crossed sort of this $10 million threshold. And going from that 10 million to 100 million is the journey that we want to take our companies on, and we can obviously do that in multiple ways, and I'm happy to talk about that as well. So 10 to 20 million roughly is where we want our current investment thesis investee companies to be.
Let's do a couple of case studies of what you have invested in, and in that, please also talk about the sectors you're interested in or business models, and where you have invested. You like sectors that that work in your model.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I'll focus on a couple of companies that have been in the news more recently, actually, as recently as yesterday, actually, both of them. Our portfolio is highly concentrated. First of all, I should say, so we don't look and feel like a typical venture capital firm where you have the power law. Power law basically says that you make, let's say, 30, 40 investments per fund, and the top sort of 10, 20% are going to return, are going to drive the lion's share of the returns. I mean, that's a typical quote unquote venture capital formula. In our case, we take a totally different approach. We actually start engaging with companies a year and a half or 2 years before they need our capital. And we add value, pro bono for that period of time. And that value addition acts as both a diligence mechanism for us. So if I make an introduction to a CXO and that individual gets excited about a prospect, that's a positive signal to us from a diligence standpoint. At the same time, obviously, if they're neutral to negative, that also says something. And the other thing is it helps us build a relationship where the entrepreneur says, hey, Iron Pillar and Mohanjit and Anand, Ashok, others bring more than just capital, to the cap table. So it's a two-way street. And as a result, we ended up investing in our first fund only in 8 companies.
Mm-hmm.
In our fund 2 series, it'll be, somewhere in the range of 13 to 14 companies. But that's about the maximum we will do. And
Mm-hmm.
not good, we've had no mortality thus far. And so we've taken a couple of companies public this year, had a couple of other exits. So let me pick one company that's perhaps call it India for the region, and another that is truly India for the world. The first one leaning more consumer, the second leaning more sort of enterprise, and now AI. The first company is a company called Bluestone. Bluestone is a vertically integrated jewelry company serving the Indian market, but with aspirations to eventually go global. And in that particular case, we invested, back in 20, we actually warehoused this particular company, but technically it folded into our first fund in 2018. And the company went public in India on the BSE in August of this year.
Mm-hmm.
And in that particular case, this was a Fund 1 company, and actually both companies that I'll talk about. Actually, in one case is Fund 1, in another case of a Fund 2 company. So Fund 1, as I said, 8 companies. So Bluestone, we invested. They were somewhere in the region of maybe 6 or 7 million in revenue at that time. Now they are closer to 150. And so that's the journey we want to take these companies on, and we do it in a very hands-on manner. When I say hands-on, it's not micromanaging. Mm-hmm. Hands-on in the terms of value addition and hopefully value creation around business development, go-to-market, hiring, all the things that investors are supposed to do. And we can do so because we have a concentrated portfolio and therefore have the bandwidth to actually spend time with each one of these companies. So when we first met Gaurav, the CEO, he was doing purely online, and that was his go-to-market, and that was his growth engine. And it was through us, and we actually, had our CFO actually sit in and become sort of an interim CFO for the company. We had one of our advisors, we call it the Iron Pillar Network. He is a marketing professor at Wharton. His name is Professor Karthik Hosnagar. And Karthik actually spent time with the founder saying, in a context like India, in a region like India, omni-channel is the way to go. So you have to focus on offline, for sort of brand building, trust building. And it's important to, whether it's malls or high street, to have, have people be able to view your store and your product set, day in, day out, as they're out with their families or loved ones. So there was actual, needle moving sort of involvement that we brought into the company, and long story short, we had the privilege of watching the founder and investors ring the bell at the BSE in August.
Congratulations. Wonderful. Now, I have a question actually based on what you said, because I remember what you told me when we spoke last about your B2C investment thesis. So are you still thinking that the first $5, $6, $10 million of revenue in B2C brands in India are online only and then they go omni-channel?
No, it's interesting. You asked that question. So we just had a long pipeline call last night where we went through a bunch of companies in the pipeline, and several of them were consumer companies or B2C companies, and sort of in the low to mid single digits. So these are not companies that we're looking at in terms of investing, immediately or in the near future, but tracking to see how they get to sort of our sweet spot. Interestingly, as entrepreneurs have matured, this is one thing that I've seen, and it's, you started doing this in 2008. I moved to India in 2007. So both of us have been watching sort of this evolution, at least in that part of the world, over almost 20 years. And so the level of maturation, the level of sophistication that entrepreneurs have has really blossomed. And part of it is because India as a market has matured. Part of it is also, the bench strength in terms of who joins either as, second time, third time co-founders or additional team members have been there, done that, right? Whether it's been successes or failures, that experience is leading to, more refined, I suppose, business planning and go-to-market strategies. To come back to your question, I think, especially in the B2C landscape, entrepreneurs are realizing that they need to have a dual strategy. While it can be primarily online, that's how they get started. But once they reach even, again, low single digit millions, right? We spoke about a company yesterday in the fashion business, which currently is only about 2.5 million in ARR or annual revenue, growing fast. But in their case, 80% of the business or 75% of the business is online. 25% is with their first, 4 or 5 stores. So I think it's all geography or market centric. But in a market like India, which is where we tend to invest, you have to have that dual strategy earlier.
And also the categories you're talking about, jewelry and fashion, these tend to want some human interaction and trying things on and stuff like that. So I think that has something to do with it as well.
That's right. And look, the other piece, which to me is fascinating, is whether it's jewelry, and we have another company called Fresh to Home, which is in food. We've realized that vertical integration is the way to create both scale and especially margin, right? So in case of Bluestone with jewelry, they source, they pour, they design, they manufacture, they sell, they service. All of that is in-house. And that leads to healthier margins. I mean, and Fresh to Home, just as an aside, it's a vertically integrated fish and poultry company. India now gone global. And they, again, source the fish, have the entire supply chain, clean, package, sell, service, within 24 to 36 hours. So having that vertical integration is the other part of our thesis or hypothesis in terms of the B2C companies.
Okay. Let's do a B2B case study.
Let's do a B2B case. So about a third of our portfolio is actually US Delaware companies that are building product from India. Actually, Chennai seems to be the hub for most of our companies on the enterprise software.
Zoho and Freshworks.
Exactly. And so I think that fraternity has expanded. So we have a company that just announced a $260 million raise yesterday. A company called Unifor. It's a very interesting story, by the way, and it's a story of sort of grit, persistence, and how entrepreneurs need to think about adapting, right, to market conditions and curveballs and googlies that tend to come. And so this is a company that started actually as an incubator associated with IIT Madras back in 2007, 2008. So this is a 18-year success story. So one of the other things I want to tell the entrepreneurs is the following. I think I call it the sort of the TikTok mindset or 24-hour news cycles. We tend to celebrate these, massive ramp ups, right? So everybody's seen that curve of, it took X number of years to get to 100 million users for XYZ category, right? Starting with TV to internet to whatever you have it, and now you have sort of a GPT phenomenon. But often we tend not to celebrate companies that have been around for a while and have gone through their, ups and downs. And even with this announcement, I mean, I got a bunch of messages saying, "Oh, this is great. Unifor has been crushing it. It's up and to the right." the reality is, even a company like Unifor has gone through its peaks and valleys. So the company started as a conversational AI company before AI was a thing uh,
Yeah.
in India, and had the banks and the telcos leveraging AI in multiple languages to answer mostly mundane queries that customers would have. It could be about their balance, it could be about their, how to pay, etc. And so a bunch of that was automated. And then what they realized is AI could also be used to enhance resolution with human in the loop. So it was, half of it was pure AI, no human in the loop. The other half of the conversations perhaps were with human in the loop. Anyway, so what India provided, this is really interesting. What India provided was the data, the interactions that
Mhm.
fed the beast, the engine, the AI engine that they were building. So when you have an SBI or an HDFC or an Airtel, think about the number of conversations that are going in as a data feed into this beast that is analyzing emotion, sentiment, how quickly are you getting to a resolution. So they actually leveraged India unknowingly before they flipped to a US Inc. and moved to Palo Alto, which is when we invested in them back in, I want to say 2019, about 6 years ago. And it has been remarkable to see them first conquer that conversational AI market, but then there was a GPT moment, right? So GPT happens, and all of a sudden,
They
Umesh,
have data.
yeah, they have the data and the conversational AI piece, because of the entire sort of GPT interface, and you could put a wrapper on it. Umesh and team and the board saw this entire industry getting commoditized, and
Yeah.
so there was this, oh shucks moment, to use the right language, to say, okay, what do we do? We can either package ourselves and sell ourselves to a larger player, or we can transform ourselves. And to Umesh and Ravi and the board's credit, they transformed into what they now call a business AI company. So what they're basically doing is they're now competing head on with the Googles and the Microsofts and the Amazons of the world, and saying, "Hey, enterprise, Fortune, 500, Global 2000, we will actually help you transform your businesses by going all in with AI. You can bring your own models, or we can bring our models to you. You can bring your own data, and we will help you stitch it all together. It's sitting in silos. We have the tech to be able to do that. We can create an orchestration layer for agents. You can bring your own agents, or we can provide that platform." So the entire stack is what's now called composable. So here's a company, an upstart from Chennai, and I posted about this yesterday, that now is truly on a global scale. It's a unicorn multiple times over, and yeah, it's what Iron Pillar was supposed to do, which is highlight Indian technological prowess, if you will,
Mhm.
on the global stage. And I think Unifor is a prime example of something like that. Again, a vast chunk of their headcount is still in Chennai and now in Bangalore, but it's truly a global company.
So, you probably know this. Uh, in 1 million by 1 million, we've taken a different approach than this typical venture capital um, mantra of blitzscale out of the get-go, go big or go home. We don't believe in any of that.
Yeah.
We do bootstrap first, raise money later. And that has produced a lot of very interesting success stories. Freshworks was incubated in 1M by 1M. So first 3 years of Freshworks was here. We
Hmm.
didn't raise money for Freshworks until they had paying customers.
Yeah.
So right now we have a company that is very interesting that you may want to look at. And in particular, I'm going to ask you something. Let me explain to you a little bit of context. This company first started in 1 million by 1 million in 2019.
Hmm.
And they have bootstrapped to about 6.5 million right now. And they are starting to think about raising money. What I'm looking for is an investor that can get some more customers. These guys have Unilever, Mars. They have very good customers and very large deals. So
Fascinating.
their $150,000 POCs are converting into $1.5 million, $2 million deals. So I would like to find them partners who can fast track this to 20 more POCs
Yeah.
ASAP. So if this is something that you think that is up your alley, and they will get to $10 million next year, without any question, they will get to $10 million next year. They're on a very, very good trajectory.
And by the way, so the short answer is yes. Please, please send me or put me in touch with the entrepreneur. The other thing I want to say is, 10 million is not a hard and fast rule, right? So as long as we have a line of sight to.
Oh yeah, there's more than a line of sight. There's a line of sight to $35 million right now. So
Okay.
It's a very, very good company. AI company.
What's interesting also, so that's fantastic. You bring that point up. From the most recent vehicle that we closed, which we're calling our India Fund 2, which only invests actually in India private limited companies, what we're finding is, even in the pipeline yesterday, of the 5 companies that we looked at, nobody had raised more than about $1.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So these are not capital hungry, capital intensive companies. These are truly, the mindset has been, and we're seeing more and more of these, is to bootstrap to not just, initial sort of product market fit, making sure your ICP is clearly defined. But like this particular example that you brought up, you've got large enterprises that are coming on board as customers, and there is this sort of land and expand that is clearly being shown, whether it's a POC, converting into a full contract, or perhaps even a full contract going in with 100K, 150K to $500,000 or $1 million, plus. That's
especially in enterprise software, you can basically use customer revenue, customer money to build your company. You don't need a lot of venture capital, and it's healthier to build without a lot of venture capital, mainly because 96% of the exits are below $100 million.
That's right.
So, if you raise too much money, you're just pricing yourself out of exits. That's not helpful.
You're so right. You're so right. Many, many years ago, and I still use this line, and maybe my VC brethren don't like me for it. So I have this sort of stack rank of sources of capital. Okay. The sources of capital should be in this order: revenue, clearly, number one, and then it's grants, non-dilutive financing, and then you have sort of beg, borrow, steal, and then venture capital. Okay. And I say it, half jokingly. The reason is, look, taking venture capital or outside capital is dilutive. It's the most expensive capital that you can have within the company, right? And so I'm not somebody who prescribes to and often in Silicon Valley especially, it gets tied to success is how much capital have you actually raised, right? And so we raise.
Unfortunately, the media has framed entrepreneurship as financing. Entrepreneurship is capital, is customers, revenues, and profits. Financing is optional, exit is optional.
That's right.
But the media has completely confused the entrepreneurs with this entrepreneurship equals financing narrative.
Yeah, that's right. So it's funny when I ask companies, how big are you? And it's a bit of a loaded question because I want to know how the entrepreneur answers. Right. What I'm looking for is for them to talk about their business,
and they will talk about how much money they have raised,
and how many employees they have. Yeah. Right. Because that became a metric, a vanity metric of some sort that, we have 150 people or something like that.
Right now that's changing because lean is now very sexy.
Lean is in. Lean is back in again. No, but I think, look, I'm going to put an Indian sort of spin on this, which is, this whole notion of there's a concept, right? You would know this is jugaad. Jugaad is just being frugal. The frugal entrepreneur is a good thing. You do
Scrappy.
scrappy. That's right. The scrappiness has to be there. And by the way, I coined this term since we last spoke, and I've written about it. I call it the Mohanjit coefficient. Okay, the Mohanjit coefficient is the following: you take ARR or revenue in the numerator, and you take equity raised till date in the denominator, and that ratio should be north of one, and ideally well north of one. Meaning that for every dollar that you've taken, right, if you've taken, that has generated at least, a dollar, ideally much more than that. And so what now we're finding this sort of Mohanjit or MJ coefficient companies within a 5, 6, 7, meaning that with a couple of $1 million in equity financing, they've been able to get to 8 to 10 million in revenue. Similar to, I mean, in the company that you mentioned or alluded to, they haven't raised any capital, so their Mohanjit coefficient is infinite from that standpoint. So that is something that we've started looking at very, very carefully. And if you can be scrappy, if you can be frugal, and at the same time be customer centric and clearly solving a pain point that the customers have, and these are recognizable customers, my goodness, I think you're really on to something at that time.
Mohanjit, I know you have a hard stop
I can
about.
go a few minutes extra. A few minutes extra, yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you, what are you looking for right now? I mean, are there trends? I mean, AI trends or consumer trends? Are there things that you're looking for specifically?
Yeah, so look, every company is an AI company at this point. I'm not saying just from a pitch standpoint and calling themselves AI native or AI led, but
Not the B2C so much.
no,
They're using AI, but they're not really AI companies.
correct. So that's where I was coming. Is every company is an AI company because they have to use it. They have to leverage it to the extent possible, and then every one of our companies, in the especially the B2C. I mean, it's amazing how entrepreneurs, again, the scrappiness comes in because they realize, what tools do I have to make my business more efficient, right? Whether it's everything from predictive analytics to bespoke marketing to you name it, to, of course, communication, social media, and all sorts of other things. They've seen this sort of margin accretion starting to happen because they're able to leverage AI in their day-to-day business and do more with less, to put it simply. And so it's very interesting. I live in this very dichotomous world. Dichotomous meaning I am sitting arguably in the heart of Silicon Valley in Palo Alto. So not a day goes by when my Uber or Lyft driver, he's talking about AI, and the waiter at the Coupa Cafe is talking about AI, and every conversation has sort of AI native feel to it, right? And we can have a different conversation on whether or not this is a bubble that we're in. But when I go to India, it's a different kind of blend of entrepreneurs. We're seeing really compelling B2C companies. Of the 5 companies yesterday we talked about, 4 of them were actually consumer centric, which was fascinating to me. So my daytime I am drinking from the AI fire hose, and the evenings I am interacting with entrepreneurs that are going after this rising middle class, growing population, young population, where they're eager for brand quality, but quality at an affordable price. And so it's a fascinating sort of bird's eye view that I have, living in both parts of the world.
What are you seeing in India? The first wave of Indian e-commerce has been, or consumer brands have been kind of the higher end population buying. Now the middle class is much more tuned into e-commerce. Everybody is using these 10-minute services like Blinkit and so on. So what trends are you seeing in going down market in e-commerce?
Yeah, it's I would say there's micro segmentation going on. So when entrepreneurs are now thinking about a TAM or truly an addressable market for them, they know, they're self-aware. So they're saying, you know what, we know where the competition is. So you're absolutely right. top of the pyramid was where, some of the higher end brands went initially because internet access, disposable income, all the things. We did some analysis and we said, while we talk about hundreds of millions in the middle class, the actual engaged spending population up until maybe, a couple of years ago was actually 50 million people.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So that is where you could monetize. Now, however, and then came, let's say, the Mishos of the world, which were trying to democratize access, truly not quite at the very base of the pyramid, but let's say, lower middle class or thereabouts, the sort of the tier 2, 3, 4 towns, the Bharat as it's being called, outside of the metros. Now what we're seeing is even in the middle, right, where folks are looking for, and we're looking at, and I'm more of an enterprise person. My partners tend to spend more time on the consumer side, but everything from beauty to food to snacking to fast fashion, and everything in between. There's some really compelling and interesting players coming up that are realizing, what, if we are able to control the supply chain, vendor relationships, some creative financing, et cetera, we can actually provide really high quality stuff for a price point that an average, an Indian can look at and buy and experience. So it's the H&M and Zara's of the world, for example, that are now coming up. By the way, one thing I do have to say, as an aerospace engineer, this is going to be a little bit of a digression. I am absolutely blown away with the entire space tech. I mean, people use this term a little bit too loosely, I think, around deep tech, but space in particular is an area that's fascinating to me. And I've been involved informally helping a bunch of these companies, over the years. But I think India has both a temporal and a capital advantage that no other, geography in the world has when it comes to space. When you look at, I would argue ISRO has the best or the most successful space program in the world, and Indian entrepreneurs, even to the 1M by1M sort of ethos, are much more capital efficient than any of their counterparts in Europe or the US by at least an order of magnitude, in some cases 2 orders of magnitude, in both in terms of time, so they can do it faster and they can do it much more cheaply. And what's remarkable to me is seeing retired ISRO scientists and Padma Bhushan winners and so on working side by side with IIT grads. So you've got the experience with perhaps the exciting naivete of the entrepreneurs saying, you know what, we can build world-class companies in space. So that's just a side note that I'm very, very excited about.
Interesting. Okay, on that note, I guess I need to let you go. So we'll talk again in a few months, and I will introduce you to a data poem, Bharat Gaddam.
Awesome.
We'll take it from there. We'll see what could happen there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful. Look forward to doing it.
Thank you for coming. Good to see you. Bye.